Hello, I'm Sandra Jones-Keller. I'm an intuitive pregnancy coach, spiritual energy healer, author of 21 Lessons to Empower the New Age Kid, and Intuitive Communication with Your Baby's Soul. And I'm here today with my husband, Thomas Keller.
Hello.
So we're joining you again today because I came across a very interesting question on a Facebook group. And actually, it wasn't even a question, it was a statement. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. But basically, the mother was saying, I need to teach my kids about how mean and cruel the world is. And so that kind of struck me. And so Thomas and I are going to talk about it. Now,
Okay.
do you want to jump in first or do you want me to start?
You go in first.
So when I read this comment, it kind of hurt my heart because, I think it's great to share your experiences with your child so that they can understand where you're coming from. But I also know that for myself, I need to be clear that it's my story and that it's my story based on my life experiences, what I have come here to do, who I am, and what I'm projecting into the world. And so the more that I can have peace and do my own healing and forgiveness work, then the more peace and love my child can experience. So I need to teach my kid how mean and cruel the world is. To me, just stops any and all possibility of your child experiencing anything but that. Because even inside of my own story, what's most important to me is that Mecca, our daughter, has an opportunity to create her own reality, create her own experiences, create her own peaceful, joyful life. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Well, and I stand on the idea that we perceive our world exactly as we are inside. So if I see the world as a mean and cruel place, I'm mean and cruel inside myself and think I have to defend against that. So in this case, when you're talking about your book 21 Lessons, this is metaphysical information that can change your life. So I would try not to put that on my child, that the world's a mean and cruel place. I would first try to go inside myself and clean that up, because the world is just the way we project that it is.
Okay, but wait a minute. So there are things that are happening in the world, or there are people who have been labeled a certain way. There are people who have been killed for doing nothing. There are things that have happened in the world. There are things that have happened to people. And so for some people, they do see and experience the world. So I don't think you can just discount it and say, oh, I'm mean and cruel, so therefore I don't think it's that simple.
Well, Mecca, our daughter, is the camera person today. Is the world a mean and cruel place to you?
Me?
Yes.
Not really.
Why? We have never taught our daughter that it's a mean and cruel world, that we have brought our daughter in here consciously with the idea that it's safe, it's a great place, and tons of opportunities, and that's the way we live our life, and that's the information we've passed on to our daughter. And I just asked her that question totally impromptu. It was no setup at all.
Okay, yeah, I get that. But maybe your experience hasn't been mean and cruel. My experience hasn't been mean and cruel. But
yes, but our experience, both of our experience was mean and cruel in our youth, in our families. I know mine was. I grew up in a very loving and very angry family. And
as did I. I grew up in a
so
loving
how did we transform our worlds from mean and cruel of our childhood to where we are now?
Lots and lots of forgiveness work.
Yes, lots and lots of work. So there's two examples right there, my wife and myself, where the world changed as we did our work internally, and our universe changed. And now we gave birth to a daughter who has never experienced the world as a mean and cruel place because it's not in our consciousness. I'm not making the mean and cruel person who brought this idea up wrong. You have to start from wherever you are. However I perceive the world, that's my starting place. And if I want my child to have a better life, which almost all of us do, I'm going to get to work in cleaning up my world so it's not laid upon her to do the work that I could have done.
Okay. I can see that. I mean, I agree with it because, I've done a lot of forgiveness work. I've done a lot of metaphysical, spiritual work, and I have transformed. But I don't want to discount
Right.
people's experiences
Absolutely.
who have had that. And so, okay, we say forgiveness work, we say we've transformed. But so if you have a parent, a mother, a father, a grandmother who has had certain, like racism is a very hot topic in our country right now.
Right.
So if you have a parent who that has been their experience, how do you move from this experience to possibility for your child? Because that's what we all want ultimately, is possibility and joy.
Well, you use the tools in your book, but not on the child, on yourself as the parent, to change my consciousness. If I grew up with racist parents and I know that, and I don't want to transfer the idea of racism to my child, I personally would need to get to work on myself and clean myself up, and then that wouldn't even be a topic for my child. But everybody has to start where they are and be honest with where they're at. So this person who thought the world is a mean and cruel place is exactly correct in their experience of the world.
Yeah, in their experience of the world.
And that's why we don't discount anybody, because everybody has their personal experience of the world.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, they are correct in their experience of the world, and to move from a mean and cruel world to something of peace and joy and love, then that's where the self-forgiveness work comes in. That's where the mind training comes in, like what the affirmations in the book, I talk about affirmations, like what are you telling yourself? Because your world is going to be an outpicturing of, my world is an outpicturing of my consciousness.
Exactly.
Your world is an outpicturing of your consciousness, and Mecca's world. And so that's what we talk to Mecca about in terms of universal law and vibration. It's like, you do X, Y, and Z, so you put forth love in the world, that's what will be magnetized to you. But you're putting forth being mean or lying or stealing or anything like, that's not to say she's doing that. But if you're putting forth those types of things in the world, then that's just going to be magnetized back to you. And that's just simply straight universal law. And, you can go, the golden rule, treat others as you treat yourself. Treat your neighbor. Treat thy neighbor as I treat myself.
Yeah.
And that's the universal law. That's the golden rule. That's just everything, because it's just saying what I put out there is coming back to me.
And you can test this. You can test this out by just putting something out there and seeing when it comes back to you. This is not hard. You don't have to rely on faith. You just become a detective of your own personal behavior and attitude and see what comes right back to you. You can change it in an instant.
Yeah, and it's like, so I can tell when I've been maybe a little cranky or in a bad mood, because Mecca will mirror that right back to me. And then I'll be like, well, why is she being so cranky? It's like, oh yeah, I remember I walked through the door in a bad mood.
Right.
So as soon as I can catch it and shift it, then it shifts in the whole house, actually.
And it doesn't matter what degree. It can be like the example you gave, or the example of this original question, the world's a mean and cruel place. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. It all can be changed. And that's the tools in your book that we talk about applying with our children, but if we apply them to ourselves first, we're way ahead of the game.
We are, and that's the beauty of this work, because if I had known, the last 30 years of studying that I've studied, if I had known this when I was Mecca's age, then my life would be very different. And these are the conversations that we have with her, so that she at least knows. Now, it's up to her to use the tools, to apply them in her life, but at least we've shared them. Anything else you want to add?
Well, yes, she knows the information. Now, all she has to do is go out in the world and apply it and practice it and see what kind of feedback she gets. And it's an easy choice once you try both sides of the coin.
Especially if you don't like what you're getting back. It's like, oh, yeah. Now you have the power to actually shift it, because it's coming from you.
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me once again. My name is Sandra Jones-Keller. Please visit my website, sandrajoneskeller.com. My books are available on amazon.com. Happy parenting, happy teaching, happy being.